Carolyn Dube here. Thanks for joining me for a little art journaling play today. Well, what am I playing with? Today it's stuff from US Art Quest. Some of the things I've had in my stash because I'm a big fan of US Art Quest and Susan Pickering Rothamel, and some of them are new to me. And what I did as I'm playing in my art journal is I was in a mood for texture, just texture. Ever had one of those days? And so I just had fun with it. There was no rhyme or reason, and I had no plan. And at the very end, I actually showed how old I was because this one little thing that I added to the art journal page really shows my age. Well, anyway, enough of my talking. Take a look and see what I made. Well, I'm starting by putting down some papers for the start of my art journal page. And with this, I'm really testing something that Susan from over at US Art Quest said, which was that the PPA, or perfect paper adhesive, would not wrinkle or bubble paper. And I thought, well, yeah, this is a pretty fluid flowing kind of adhesive, so we'll see. I've got vintage ledger paper that I put down first. Then I've got some cheap kids writing paper, the kind you get in the cheap section of a drugstore. And then that's some super cheap graph paper. And I have to say, usually these papers really wrinkle up and bubble, and using the PPA, they didn't do that. Well, we have to get some color on here, so I'm using the Perfect Pigments, also from US Art Quest, just to get some different colors on here. And I don't really have any idea where this page is going. I'm just letting myself play and experiment, and clearly I'm not even staying within the lines, because as I'm painting around this stuff, if I go over the edge, doesn't bother me in the least. It's just loose and it's play. These are early layers for whatever I'm doing, so we'll see what they become. Well, I'm getting the colors down here, and next thing I want to do is add in some stenciling. I'm going to bring in my wall of words stencil here that I designed for over at Stencil Girl Products, and I just want to get a little bit of that feeling of book text added in. Now, the way I'm stenciling this is with a flat brush, and I am not following the rules of stenciling, and I don't care if it's a little sloppy because it's just going to be something in the background. Just need that little touch back there. Found it very interesting that I put the word everything there. That's going to come back a little bit later in a way that I so didn't expect, but I am super happy with how it came about. Well, next I'm going to use City Story Stencil from Kathy Nichols, and this has this most wonderful building on it, so I'm going to just use a cosmetic sponge and black paint, and I'm cheating with the sponge. That way I don't have to worry about masking anything off because I just want to get the building for this part of it. So I've got my building on there, and now I need to add a little more color. I say need more color. It's really that I want more color. I had that impulse, so I'm going to follow it. Well, the next thing I'm going to bring in is something called Great Tape, and I want to create some texture with that. This is tape that comes on a roll, and I am just going to fill in all of those blue areas with this tape. And this tape, well, I'm not going to leave it as tape. I am going to use this tape to create texture. It's not going to adhere anything to it. Right now I'm just getting down a flat coverage of the entire blue areas, and then what I'm going to do is use this to create texture. I'm going to drag my fingers across it to wrinkle up the tape. It's going to create these cool little waves in it. Now it is tape, so it's still sticky, and I've got to find a way to make it unsticky, because if you just have open adhesive on an art journal page, we can see the problem with that. I'm going to have stuff sticking to it whenever I close my journal. So what I'm going to do is grab some paint, and I am just going to go right on top of that. I am going to paint right on top of the tape. That way I capture the texture, but the stickiness disappears. And while I wait for that stuff to dry, I'm going to add some words onto that writing paper, that kids' school writing paper that I glued down. And I decided to go with the word play, because that's really what I'm doing here today. And rather than just put it on there once, I'm just going to fill in that whole piece almost like I've ripped off a piece of it that has the words on it. And that stencil is called Now Is the Time, that I also designed for over at Stencil Girl. Well, now it's time to bring that texture out in the blue. I'm taking the cosmetic sponge that has the black, just the black paint on it that I used from stenciling the building, and I'm just dragging it gently across the top of my painted tape. That way it grabs that texture and makes it really pop out. Well, now it's time for a little more color play. And I'm just smearing colors around, seeing what happens. Not really thinking a whole lot here, just kind of following impulses because, you know what, I'm just playing. And that orange was totally jumping out at me, so I am just going to grab a little bit of white on that orange brush and I am gonna smear it around and kind of soften some of that in the background. And as long as I have the white out, I might as well add it some other places, but I'm actually gonna grab a clean brush because smearing the orange on top of the yellow or on top of the green, yeah, not gonna be a pretty look that I'm after. So I actually did grab a fresh brush. And now I'm gonna make that texture pop a little bit more with just a little bit of white paint on my finger, just dragging along that. I'm absolutely having fun with that texture. Well, I want to add even more texture, so I'm going to use something called prills right around that blue grate tape texture. Unfortunately, my video camera is completely acting up and the file is corrupted and it won't let me do sound, so I had to resort to using a still picture here for you. But just imagine I put some of the PPA glue or adhesive right around the edges and then sprinkled on those prills. All the different little sizes of the holeless circles just absolutely looked fantastic and organic around the edge, and little bits of them still stuck to parts of the tape that were, I guess, a little bit sticky. Well, the camera's working again, thankfully, and so you can see that I put down some great tape and then some of the dichro fibers right on top of it. Love the texture that they give, that little bit of sparkle and shine. They also react to heat. They're fusible, so I'm going to bring in a heat gun and just fuse them right there to the great tape. And I'm doing this to make it so that they aren't quite as frayed. It gives them a little different look to it, but it doesn't get rid of all of the bits of fraying. I don't want to do that. I guess if I wanted to do that, I could iron it down, that kind of thing, but I'm not going to go crazy and pull out an iron when a heat gun can absolutely do what I need. Now it's time to bring in a little Stabilo pencil just to kind of trace an outline and add a little more depth and dimension to it. If you're enjoying this video so far, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up on YouTube. And of course, if you think there are people that would enjoy it, I'd love it if you shared it with them. While adding these other little bits and touches of paint, it came to me that I needed the word is. Play is everything for me. Just seeing how things go, what they look like. And so in the spirit of play, I'm just grabbing the end of a paintbrush and making dots in the paint. If I didn't have enough on the palette to do it, I'm just going to grab it right out of the lid of the bottle. If you've been enjoying this video and would like to see more of my videos, I'd love it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll never miss when I have a new video. You can also find me over on my blog at acolorfuljourney.com. And over there I also have a free newsletter with a downloadable video and PDF about 3 ways to thwart the inner critic. Well, as I am playing around with this, something is about to happen that's going to show my age. Well, it's right on top of that building, that sort of plus cross sign that's a TV antenna back in the old days when you'd have big antennas. And I realized there was only one that was really on the stencil, but just because there's just one on the stencil doesn't mean I can't add more if I want them. So I am actually going to go and add a few more antennas because that's how I really remember those big old city buildings, is having lots and lots of antenna up there. And that's it for my play today. Thanks for being a part of this colorful journey.